Hello. Today in this session, I introduce you the topic literature and science. We shall discuss what is literature and how it is related to science. In the earlier sessions, we have already discussed how literature is related to individual life, how it is related to society. And today we discuss how it is related to science. I am Dr. Gurunath Badiger, Associate Professor of English, Government Pressure College, Dharwad. The idea of literature and the idea of science always draw attention to every reader. We generally consider that both literature and science are two different levels of experiences or thought processes. But if we go deeper in discussion, if we probe deeper, we come to know that there is an underlying relationship between literature and science. Literature and science are two important subjects that always draw a greater discussion because both the subjects can be compared as well as contrasted on various grounds. Literature and science, as many believe, are two fundamental and fundamentally different activities of human mind. The way we think about literature is different from the way we think about science. Some critics believe that literature is the antithesis of science, whereas some other critics argue that there is not much difference between literature and science. This is a debatable issue. We discuss both the relations or what we call similarities, and at the same time, the differences between these two important aspects of study. Coleridge, one of the famous poets of 19th century Romantic period, at one place said that the opposite of prose is not poetry, but verse. And the opposite of poetry is not prose, but science. By saying so, Coleridge means to say that literature is an antithesis of science, or science is an antithesis of literature. How? And how can we relate these both subjects is another question. Science, as we all know, is as old as the creation of this universe. We cannot just talk about the flying planes today or the digital world we are living in, the world of computers. We believe that the progress of the world depends on science. With the help of science, we can understand part of the truth or apply it to life. In fact, we cannot live without science. Our everyday life is governed by science. All our activities are unknowingly governed by science. If, our morning clock, alarm clock is science. Water heater is science. Solar energy is science. The blade or a razor we use for shaving is science. The vehicles we use, the phones we use to communicate, for travel, for communication, for living, for knowledge sharing, what we are doing now, online teaching. Everything is governed by science. It's because of this reason we adopted scientific approach and temper. So science has, you know, taught us many ways. It has, uh, it has in fact reformed our living. It's true that scientific approach and temper liberated man in the past and will continue to liberate, because science concerns itself with positive thinking. So science is an experience, of course. We do believe that science believes in facts. Science taught us certain facts, and it's a systematic study of nature. Our way of thinking is disciplined by science. So science is a system. And what about literature? Literature is also a system. As we discussed in the earlier sessions, literature is nothing but the best that is thought and the best that is written, the best thoughts and the best language. It involves a systematic understanding of life, understanding of society, understanding of, the men and manners. So literature is a way of experiencing the world which naturally finds its expression in either a kind of prose or more fully ordered rhythm, which is called verse, while science is altogether another way of experiencing the world. It represents a different habit of mind. Both are experiences. In that way, literature is also talking about experiences. Science is also talking about experiences. The way of talking is different. Human life needs both for its richness and perfection. The reason of scientist is one entirely unpeeled by dreams, hopes, longings, ideals, impulses, instinct, and other constituents of human mind. Of course, science does not believe in mere dreams, in mere hopes, or desires and longings, or sometimes great ideals. Or a scientist is not governed by impulses or instincts. He or she goes by fact, empirical research, finding the truth, asserting the truth, and try to understand exactly what it is. A kind of laboratory understanding, a kind of, factual understanding of nature. On the other hand, literature is something different from science. If science is dealing with facts and figures, literature concerns with the idiosyncrasies, or what we call peculiar working whims and caprices of the mind. Sometimes when we talk about Lady Macbeth in Shakespeare's Macbeth, the sleepwalking scene of Lady Macbeth, or Macbeth's words at the end, life is a tale told by an idiot. So they talk about the idiosyncrasies or whims and caprices of human mind. Moreover, it is directly related to human emotions, passions, and sentiments. A literary spirit may not contain the scientific bent of mind. It is purely based upon the personal experience of artist. When Shakespeare says, all the world is a stage, we are merely the players, it cannot be ascertained by any laboratory report. It cannot be ascertained by any empirical research. It is understood to everybody that the world is like a stage. Therefore, we take literary spirit and scientific spirit separately. The artist is freer than the scientist, for he is not controlled by a system. That's why there is a proverb in Kannada, Ravi Kanaddannu Kavi Kanuva. What the sun cannot see, the poet can see. He visualizes. It means that what the scientist cannot see, an artist may. A rishi can do that. A poet can do that because he has liberty to think beyond the ordinary understanding of life. If we look at the methods, both science and literature, the methods of science and the methods of arts are different. Here, whenever I am talking about art, literature, and poetry are same. Here, on the other hand, we have science like physical sciences, living sciences, life sciences. On the other hand, we have one set of people who are involved in research, fact finding, generating results in the laboratory. Scientific method is characterized by logical analysis of facts, whereas literature is based on emotions. When Wordsworth says, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats over high vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake and beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Golden daffodils cannot be, of course, tested in the laboratory whether the daffodils are having the properties of gold. And when they fluttering and dancing, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance, tossing like human beings, the poet sees that kind of a thing, but the scientist may not believe it. In literature, intuition and imagination are very important. Intuition. However, the scientist also needs imagination for forming hypotheses, but it is difficult to indicate the ways in which scientific imagination works in fact finding. It's rather difficult to ascertain the imagination used by the scientist. It is said that scientists do use imagination. Scientists do dream, but we cannot always say that all the research is based on the dreams and aspirations. But in case of an artist, intuition and imagination work better. A man of science seeks truth as a remote, lonely, and unknown benefactor. For him, truth is considered as lonely and unknown benefactor. The poet singing a song in which all human beings join with him, rejoices in the presence of truth as our visible friend and hourly companion. The poet's truth is something different. It's a truth that he seeks in the company of people, that he tries to apply it to everybody. Everyone join with him. Everyone rejoices when Shakespeare says, oh, sweets are the uses of adversity. When you say golden girls and chimney sweepers all must come to dust, or when Keats says a thing of beauty is a joy forever, this truth is beauty, beauty is truth. All these statements are based on poets' understanding of nature, poets' understanding of life, which he wants to share and experience together with all his readers. Whereas a man of science seeks truth as a remote, lonely, and unknown benefactor tries to see. Wordsworth said of poetry that it is the breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge, the impassioned expression which is in the countenance of all science. Poetry is the breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge. Art also speaks about all knowledge. It has touched upon all types of knowledge. It has gone into the depths of ocean. It has gone into the abyss of the ocean. It has visions of the worlds of Titans, the Paradise Lost, the Eden Garden, the Pandemonium. Try to understand different levels of knowledge. Whereas science wants facts, wants to show it physically, tested by the scientific tools. In science, it is said, we murder to dissect. We murder to dissect. If, say, for example, a rose is given to a boy, a botanist, it will be just dissected and pasted it on the paper. The very variety of the rose, the scientific name of the rose is written, and number of petals are written. But if it is given to an artist or a poet like Burns, he writes a poem, "My love is like red, red rose." Or someone writes a beautiful story like Nightingale and the Rose. So for him, the whole of the rose is important. The symbol behind the rose, the image of the rose, how rose symbolizes love and life. Red, red rose. But for a botanist, it's simply a flower which is to be studied, or its properties, medicinal properties, or its uses are beautifully discussed, no doubt about it. But looking at the beauty of the rose, the poet thinks in a different way. The scientist is concerned with things as they really are in themselves. To the botanist, again, one more example. The lily is Hexandria monoxynia, or some other jaw-breaking bombast of the kind. To the poet, it is the lady of the garden. Lily is the lady of the garden, or the plant flower of light. The poet sees some person. He uses personification. He uses some figures. See beyond the ordinary meaning of a particular object. Literature also helps science in forming new hypotheses. It is said, of course, there are certain arguments that the imaginary world created by artists has helped scientists to go ahead with new inventions. It is to be, of course, debated. There are many references in Ramayana, Mahabharata. We have Pushpaka Vimana, we have wonderful world created. We are talking about people floating and walking on the water. We have read about people using Viman technology or flying technology. So it is, whether it is scientifically correct or not, that is another part of the story. There was an imagination. There was Man in the Moon was written well before man, in fact, landed on the moon. Man in the Moon, The Invisible Man, the scientific fiction written by H.G. Wells in the beginning of 20th century. It is said that Darwin himself was a great naturalist. In fact, many scientists were great writers of literature and the worshippers of beauty. There is no doubt about it. We have examples. But whether scientists were benefited by literature or literature is benefited by science, both are to be, in fact, asserted by the facts and their experiences. Scientists like Humphrey Davy, Rowan, and Hamilton were the great writers of verses. We have examples, in fact. Darwin was a great writer. Einstein was a great writer. Humphrey Davy was a great writer. Even Ptolemy, the great astronomer, was himself a true poet. From the history of science and literature, it is quite clear that both branches of knowledge are complementary to each other. We have seen recently our great president, former president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was a great writer. That's a great spiritual man. So scientists are not totally different from the other species, and they are human beings. They are governed by feelings and emotions. They do have a poetic mind, even they have better understanding of nature than the ordinary persons have. But it must be kept in view that their methods are entirely different, as the aim of science is to ascertain, to put in intelligible and ordered relationship of the facts of the physical world, whereas literature is governed by visions, imagination, and emotion. A poet may see what scientists may not see. A poet is also a seeker of greater truth, but scientist tries to present the truth he or she finds in their study. Leigh Hunt says, poetry begins where matter of fact or of science ceases to be merely such, to exhibit a further truth, the connection it has with the world of emotion and its power to produce imaginative pleasure. Of course, to continue the argument that literature takes liberty, art takes liberty, whereas scientists cannot take liberty, cannot simply say that the golden girls and chimney sweepers all must come to dust. You cannot simply say that, the beautiful moon, comparing moon to some interesting objects, or the face of a woman to moon. A poet takes liberty by using figures of speech, by using similes, metaphor, personification, hyperbole. Poet uses all those things, but scientist cannot. He always, ascertain, presents facts and figures. So, in taking into consideration the contribution of both artists and scientists, both are equally important for us. Literature stresses the interpretation of life in all its aspects, which further quickens and inspires the wonder world of mystery and spiritual consciousness, vastness, and beauty. There is spiritual consciousness. The poet begins where the scientist stops. In a way, both literature and science complement each other in understanding nature in a better way. What we should understand here is that both literature and science present experiences which are equally important for human life. We want science, we want literature, we want science for betterment of our living, and we want literature for betterment of life. There is living and life. Both are equally important for us. With this, I close today's session. Thank you so much.